All right, everybody, I just beat Expedition 33, and what a game. This is a spoiler discussion type of video I'm doing here because I want to talk about my experience with it. This will include a lot of spoilers here. This is not the review. The review of it will be separate, but this is more for me to try and make better sense of the game, in a sense, because, man, this is confusing to a degree. Like, there's a lot of elements here that are really good, and how they start things off is very intriguing. It hooks you in right away with the whole homage thing. You know, within this universe, you're set up to believe that the characters that you see and then you play as, like, this is happening within a sort of like weird like fantasy world, but is the reality of the game, right? You don't know it's not actually the reality until much later on, obviously towards the end of the game. It's something else entirely. It is a canvas where these people are living in this canvas, but they're painted because of this family that Andy Serkis plays the father of. Ben Starr plays the brother character. And you essentially, this whole issue and this whole thing originated because of this family in the real world within this universe, right? Because there was like a fire and that broke them, lost a son. The two sister characters were never the same either, in different ways. The parents were never the same either, in different ways. But you immediately are hooked in because the way this game opens up, it gets you, for at least for a lot of people I've talked to about it, it gets you attached. Like, it gets you feeling sad. This is tragic because of the whole homage thing. You know, leading up to this game, it was promoted that, like, yeah, there's the paintress you gotta take out. The paintress paints a number every year, and that number is for the age group of people that have a year left to live, right? You like Versos, he's tired and he helps reunite his family so they don't waste away in the canvas, right? And that's the thing too that they set up as part of the lore, where basically this family has a gift and has these powers to paint, but their paintings are like alive, or the canvases are alive, and they can choose to go inside them and live inside them if they want, but it has pros and cons. You could literally waste away in it and essentially die, from what Renoir was talking about. Like, you can die within the canvas eventually because you lose yourself or whatever, which is very interesting what they do with that. And I think this is a great story concept. Like, in some aspects, a little bit tropey, or at least a little bit reminiscent of other stories, but also very different too. It's very much a story of, like, you know, about family, love, loss, cherishing those around you, you know, because, like, life is short and, you know, time is limited, things like that. So it has a lot of good positive messages in that, and I really do enjoy that. Very cool. I'll get to the endings later, though, in more detail, but it just sets you up to where, you know, you Expedition 33, you're gonna go try and stop the paintress, thinking the paintress is a real villain when she's really not. The paintress is there to sort of like somewhat shield from everything and everyone being erased, and like immediately, essentially delaying the canvas from being like erased forever by the real villain of the story, in a sense, which is Renoir. But there's different versions of him, right? There's the real life version within the universe. There's the painted copy version as well. Same with his wife, who ends up being the paintress, which is wild. But you're thinking, you're set to believe that, oh yeah, let's go on this expedition. We got to fight creatures, monsters, all this stuff. Get the paintress, stop the paintress, and then I'll save everybody, right? Thinking that'll be a happy ending. And there's already been 67 other expeditions prior to Expedition 33, right? This music is really good too. This goes in as far as being really hype. Really enjoy it. But yeah, and it's a great concept. You go in, you're exploring the world, it's open world, you're seeing all these different unique, weird things, from environments to characters, different monsters and creatures you fight and bosses, things like that. And lore wise, it's very, very awesome setup and go across this continent and just explore and have fun. But it's mostly a serious, intense type of tone. There's a little humor here and there. They do try to like bounce out a bit with that, which is good. It's very cool to learn about the characters' backstories a bit, and like you find about CL as far as she lost her husband to, the whole Gomage thing. You find out Lune has lost her parents as well. Mael, who you don't know is Alicia, she lost her parents and went through different adopting families, things like that, until she ended up with Gustav and his sister as their family. And it's just crazy how their worlds sort of and stories have a similar message of, or interconnecting in a sense. If you waste away in a perfect world, living life, enjoying it, and happen to pass away, then you can be at peace with the outcome it brings. And yes, there are many people who feel the same way about that, for sure. And there are people that feel and agree with the other ending, which is what Blood Magnolia talked about as far as Versus ending, where essentially, instead of living a false life, which is technically what that would be, even though you'd be happy, or at least some people would view it as being happy, you're living the real life, you're living your real world life instead of living in this, like I said, matrix, where you're living inside a matrix, ignorant of what's really going on in the real world, because some people believe in the whole ignorance is bliss thing, right? Type of mentality. Others don't. I don't think either of y'all are wrong for how you feel, because this game is going to evoke different emotions, different reactions, things like that for everyone. You're either going to be on one side or the other with this. I don't know yet for me. Because both endings have their pros and cons, like I said. And yeah, you could choose to live in a world where everything's good. You don't have to deal with the reality of things, which is like in Mayo's case, she lived through a fire, but it messed up her face and she can't speak because of it. And that's a real thing too. That's like a real world thing, like that can happen to people that get in fires. They can be injured really badly like that, or other things, or worse, And for some people, they don't want to live like that. So it's tough. Someone in fresh grief, and especially having lost their voice, doesn't always think clearly and need another's intervention. Once again, not saying you're wrong. That's just a different perspective. And that's fine. We all have different perspectives. In some cases, yeah, that can be the right thing to do. In other cases, maybe not. It's subjective, right? It depends sometimes on the situation. I still don't know what the heck I'm gonna come to with this one. I think I'm going to wait to my actual review of it to come to the final decision of what I side with in terms of the ending, because I still need to process this. I still need to think about it. It's just wild to me. I honestly see both sides, but I'm just arguing for his because I feel like it. Okay. I mean, that's fine. I didn't take it as an argument. I just took it as we're just having a discussion. That's what this is about. It's having a spoiler discussion about the game. And what we think about and how it makes us feel. And what to make sense of it, right? I really love the characters though. They're really written good. Like Gustav, I really got attached to. Mael, Verso, like the painted version of Verso. Like I liked him, but then obviously I got mad and annoyed because like, oh man, you end up really betraying him and things like that. But then I found out his reasons why he wanted to betray the others. Essentially, it's because he wanted to save his mother. And so I can understand that. If you're someone who values family highly, you're attached to your family, you want, even if you're, and this wasn't even a real Verso person, it's like a painted copy, right? Essentially like a clone, if you want to lack of a better term, basically a clone. Um, but that said clone, I mean, all the memories and thoughts and feelings of the original version is like, I'm tired of living like this. I want to save my mother. I'm going to do everything I can to do so. I can respect that and understand that. And so he betrays, you know, the fictional painted people within the canvas to do so, right? Because he wants to get the piece of his mother out of the canvas so she doesn't die, right? And lose herself. That is tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. That's just tough to deal with. And so him not being completely honest and anything like that and doing what he did, it does make sense. Because of good story writing and all that, right? Character writing and pacing and just all the dialogue. This is probably gonna be a long video, by the way, because man, I got a lot on my mind about this. I'm still a little mad they got rid of Gustav like early, like the way they did. I don't know. I just really like that character, and he essentially got replaced by Verso in terms of like a gameplay character model designs like that. Yeah, like that. I don't know, bothered me to an extent because like I got used to Gustav and I liked his character, even though he was ready to take himself out, which was crazy. Like so they show up on the island, right? They show up on the continent, ready to go. And then very much like I'm trying to think what's a movie that is very reminiscent. Either like a horror movie or like a Michael Bay movie or even freaking, not Pearl Harbor. Oh jeez. World War II, one of the beaches, Normandy, I think. Almost like the beach of Normandy. It's like the majority of the expedition gets wiped out. And Gustav, Lune, and a few others survive, right? But once he realizes that and gets to a point, he gets to a low point because he can't find anybody else. And that breaks him. Understandably so, because war, seeing your comrades and friends die like that, war and just death, and that affects people in different ways. And that can affect someone to be like that, like how Gustav turned, right? And it took Lune popping up to knock him into his senses, right? And get him like, no, let's keep going. At first I was like mad at him for getting like that because it's like, dude, you train for this, you prepare for this. Like, come on now, you need to keep going and stuff like that too. But then I reflect on it and I think back like now about it. And it's like, you know what? I understand. Because going through something tragic like that, like witnessing something like that, that is extremely stressful and traumatizing. And so how they wrote him, yeah, I think they wrote him in a way that's honestly relatable and realistic to some people. So to me, that makes sense the way he reacted. I think if Gustav would have remained alive, she would have made different choices. That's a possibility because if he remained alive, there might have been a third ending type of multiple ending thing because obviously he would have influenced her choice in some way, right? He would have said his opinion on things too. I don't know. The reality is though, from like Charlie, was it Charlie? This is his name, Charlie Cox, Daredevil, the actor who plays Daredevil in Marvel. he revealed he only spent like 4 hours or so in the studio recording lines, so he didn't really like his character wasn't going to last long. He already knew, um, which kind of sucks. Like I guess that was always intentional, maybe that Gustav was never meant to be like a long-lasting character. But then when you find out later on in the game that Mael ends up realizing that she's essentially like another version of Alicia, like she's a painted copy version in a sense or whatever, and has the power to bring people back within the canvas, obviously, that did essentially die. My thing is like they could have easily brought Gustav back to be part of the party again. They did, because they had Verso as the replacement archetype, because essentially Verso and Gustav were the same like combat archetype. It's kind of bothered me. It's like, really, dude, you could have did something a little bit different than that, but it is what it is. There's supposed to be a live action adaptation in the works too. Yeah, there definitely is. So I'm really intrigued by that and how they're going to approach that and how much they're going to stick to in terms of like if they're going to stick closely to the source material, or are they going to mess up and do what a lot of people do and try to make their own thing, create their own story, and go too much in that direction? Because a lot of people are already mad and pissed off that like a lot of these video game adaptations into film or TV, most of them are bad because they don't stick enough to the source material. Halo is a good example. Assassin's Creed's another good example. I can keep going, but you get the point. I would very much like to see a live action, but I'm also concerned because, like I said, if they don't stick closely to the source material and adapt it correctly, then you're going to piss off a lot of people. So, what else about the lore we found out? SK, so I was wrong about some theories. I had theories when it came to what was really going on. I thought SK might betray us instead of Verso because originally it was set up that SK was the most powerful being within this universe, supposedly, right? So I had the idea of like maybe SK is the true villain, because why is he just letting the paintress do her thing, right? That didn't work out. He was just essentially another pawn in a sense. He was a painted character in the world, so he wasn't, all powerful. Neither is the paintress either, though. Come to find out too, right? She's essentially another sort of cog in a wheel or pawn in a sense within this lore and universe, but at the same time was doing her painting the numbers every year was essentially a way to delay the inevitable, to keep things going within the canvas, because the canvas is the last piece of Versal's soul within it, right? And her husband was just trying to just get rid of it because, in his view, even though he's gone, it's like he wanted to, like, it's understandable to mourn, the loss of someone and grieve, but his viewpoint seems to be you can't be tied to that. You can't be bound to that. You have to move on and continue living your life. And so the more I think about it, the more I understand where he's coming from too on that regard. Like, and that's why he was trying to get essentially everything erased in the canvas and save his daughter as well as his wife, because he wanted them both to move on in a sense from the loss of their son Verso, Mael's, or Alicia's brother, right? So I get that, but Mael wasn't trying to do that because Mael, aka Alicia, was unhappy in the real world because of what happened to her. So she wanted to fight against it. And ultimately, it's like, when it comes to a loved one, it really tests your ideals and morals a bit. Like, do you, for example, let's say you got a family member, it's like essentially could stay alive if you keep them on life support, right? And you had the tough decision to be like, do you continue to keep them alive by them being on life support because you can't let them go? And you essentially want to live this sort of like fantasy life in a sense of like, if they're still around, as long as they're still alive and around, it's okay. You didn't lose them, right? Or do you try to move on and let them go and essentially pull the plug? I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it kind of echoes a similar vibes, a similar message. At least the game does. That's what I get from this. And that's not an easy decision to make. I feel like that's up to the person. And that's a very difficult decision to make. Now, obviously, if this person like has in their will or something like that, like, I don't want to be a vegetable, let me, die, pass on, things like that, then you got to respect their wishes, right? Some people don't, but that's why probably there's no distinct true ending. I agree. I 100% agree. This also somewhat clarifies that there would ever be a sequel. I don't think there would be a sequel. I think this is maybe a one and done, but the devs have talked about making DLC, so now I'm curious even more so how they would do the DLC, because if they are going to do like story DLC of some kind, I think I'm more intrigued about it being how it is all got set up, like going back in the past and essentially seeing the world a little bit differently, like seeing how this canvas got started, right? What actually truly happened with the whole fire situation. So I think it needs to be like a prequel DLC of some kind instead of like anything afterwards, because the way it ends, whatever ending you go with, it's just I mean, they could do a sequel, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know where they would go. Like the heritage of the family that started it all. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Renmore, when I did, I forgot the last name of them, of the family name. I forgot how to pronounce it, but yeah, Renmore, his wife, 2 daughters, Clair and Alicia, like, not necessarily the heritage, but just show what the heck started the fire, maybe explain a bit more of like how their gift works with the whole painting, and I guess how you can go into the canvas and like have these people be alive in the canvas, things like that. Like, because one thing this game didn't really do a great job at is they just sort of like brushed over the fact that their family has this power with painting, right? Where things come alive within the canvas. Things are alive within the canvas. And they can choose to go in and out. And they don't really explain that very well here. So maybe there needs to be like a prequel DLC to better explain that. They just sort of brush over it a bit, like, and just expect players just like, oh, let's just expect players to accept it for what it is, I guess. So that's a little bit of a gripe of mine. Then again, maybe it's explained in some side questing stuff or lore stuff, but the thing is, there wasn't really much side questing to do outside of the gestural stuff, and then like you can fight optional bosses. I didn't even collect all the the expedition logs either, which would have not offered too much more in terms of lore. It's more about like what happened on the expeditions. So there are what? There are just not clearly stated. Are you talking about their gift, their power being explained or not explained really? Or are you talking about extra lore that just goes into... So I thought that gives you more lore. Right. But what I feel like that lore is going to be, it's not going to really explain the power that the family has when it comes to their painting. That's what I'm getting at. It's going to be more about lore of like what happened on the previous expeditions and stuff like that. which is not necessarily bad. It's just I feel like the game doesn't do a great job of explaining how or why this family has its power. What if there was a hidden painter and they wake up from the grave? I don't know. You can't tell me yes or no without, you can't tell me yes or no on them explaining why the family has their power and why it works the way they do without telling me the bosses. You can tell me the bosses. At this point, I don't care. This is a lore. This is a spoiler lore discussion. Like they would be so confused why they're still existing. Yeah. I don't think there's a hidden painter though. You can fight Alicia, Clair, and Simon. Nice. Nice. I mean, I'm not too surprised by that. My thing is, what lore does it offer by defeating them? That's great, but what about the lore behind that? Clay, I didn't know was even a character till super late. That's like, she was just, I kind of dislike how they throw her in out of nowhere in a sense. Like she just came out of nowhere being a sibling character when we are essentially thought to think that it's just Alicia as a daughter character, right? And then later on Verso, of course. Okay, Blood, gotcha. Well, that's the thing, Naomi. There are journals in here. It's just they're done in a like, the way journals are done are these logs, like these like crystal like or hologram like looking logs and whatnot, and you get like a brief like voice or playback of like Meese expedition. In terms of lore, like side stuff, you find out lore through doing the main story, collecting those logs, talking to different NPCs sometimes too. Probably why they gave her a whole dungeon to herself. I was halfway through it. Gotcha. I definitely want to come back to this at some point in the future, like do a new game plus run or just do a new playthrough when I have more time and like explore like the end game a bit more. Because the end game is tough. Like there are super difficult bosses compared to the main story bosses. Also, I don't think it's just their family. I think the painters are a faction of people from some of the dialogue, not just one family. No, you're right. You're right. I meant to touch on that too. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, because they at one point talk about this war, right? It's Clea and Mael talking, right? And there's a topic of this war being brought up, but their parents are fighting within the canvas or whatever the heck. But in the real world, there's some type of war going on. And that's never really explained either. At least from what I played. I mean, I didn't do all the side stuff. Maybe it's better explained through some of the side stuff. I don't know. But there's some type of conflict going on. There are, I think, are other painters out there. And maybe the war is between their family of painters and another faction of painters, something like that. I don't know why. They don't really go into that either. That's what I'm kind of hoping there's either like a prequel DLC of some kind that better explains this stuff. Or maybe we could get a sequel. I don't know how, but maybe. Then again, I don't know if the sequel would really do justice to explain things better or not. It also depends on what ending they would go with for the sequel, right? Like what would be considered a true ending? That's a tough one. Do you go with the ending of Mael, where she's essentially living this false happiness because she is unable to deal with, you know, the real world consequences, the real world stuff that happened? Or do you go with Verso's ending where essentially they erase the canvas and the family goes on living in real life? I do think it does by doing the end game stuff, because Google has some decent details. Some are still vague. Well, yeah, gotta keep some stuff a mystery. There's probably already, because it's been like, what, this game came out in April, it's already July. There's more than likely already lore videos out there that explain more detail, more in depth about what the heck is going on in this game. So it's just crazy. And I'm intrigued to see what else this team does, like Samfall Interactive, like what are games they do in the future, where they do a sequel, where they actually do prequel DLC. There definitely needs to be better explanation on some things, for sure. If they do a sequel, heck, maybe it can focus more on the real world stuff. If they go with that ending, like real life stuff, you know, what's going on with this conflicts between these painters and stuff like that. You know, family gets to start the path of healing. I understand. Us also having body issues, that her disfigurement is a problem and she feels guilt and everything, but escapism is the way to live. In your opinion, that is no way to live. Other people are going to feel differently. And to me, there's no right or wrong. It just depends on the person perspective. Physical pain and misery is better. Okay. You think it's better than psychological? Interesting. We live in a reality where people deal with a lot of mental health issues these days on top of physical issues. And I like that this game addresses that in many ways, right? This touches on so many sensitive topics, you know, tragedy, loss of family, mental pain, physical pain, trauma, guilt, betrayal, who do you trust, all that. I tried it once. The escapism fails, it almost hurts more having that false world. And I can't say more on stream as that is deeply personal. Well, yeah, obviously I'm not expecting you to. I'm not expecting you to. But once again, everyone's viewpoint is going to be based on personal experience, like, and how you feel. Once again, it's going to be subjective. Or it's going to differ because people have different opinions, and that's fine to have different opinions. Nothing wrong with that. And I kind of like that this game does a story where there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong ending, I feel like. I think that's what helps make this game so captivating. I think that helps make this game a game of the year contender, because the story, the way it's told, is so freaking, it's relatable. So much relatable. Like, wow. It makes you deal with these tough choices and stuff like that. Verso said they are all hypocrites for a reason. Oh yeah, 100%. Because Verso has his, you know, way of thinking and what he's fighting for, which is his mother, but he also cares technically still for others, right? Mael is fighting for what she believes in as well too, and what she thinks is right. Everybody's fighting for what they think is right, but they're also hypocrites because they've also in some ways betrayed their own beliefs. Yeah, exactly. Everyone thinks their way is right, and it's a story that tells that for sure. So that's also why, to me, there's no right or wrong. It's just freaking gray, dude. It is a very gray storytelling, gray ending, no matter what. I don't think I'm right, but Mayo's ending hurts so many others outside the canvas, and I don't agree with that. And that's fine that you feel that way. That's totally fine. I personally don't know which side is like, I don't know which ending to like go with. That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna wait for my review and probably try to pick one there in my review when I talk about it. It's tough. And I still might not even choose one I side with because it's just, wow. It's just really difficult. So does Verso. Versos, though, here's where I feel like some people are more aligned with what Blood's saying, because while you say Versos does hurt people too, the thing is, those people in the canvas are fictional. They're essentially make-believe. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't necessarily change that like you get attached to these characters, you know, but technically they are fictional, right? They are just in a canvas. They are painted people within this universe, right? They're not actual people. Males to say, Versal's ending has him sacrifice himself to save the many. I thought he sacrificed himself to save his mom, because that was his whole goal, right? And point was he was trying to save his mother. He even said so, like in the game early on, like essentially that was his thing, and that when it comes to choosing the expeditioners over his mother, no, he chooses his mom. Is he saving them though? Are they happy with their fate? In terms of the fictional people, no, because they're all gone, right? In terms of the reality, like when, you know, his family is all gathering there, as we saw in the one ending, the main one I think that's unhappy is Alicia, right? I think she's the main one that's unhappy still. And her mother too. I'll say the other two that's unhappy. Clair and Raynor seem like they're ready to move on and get over it and things like that and go on with their lives, stuff like that. So yeah. Person wants to end so that they can heal without being able to interact with him. Right. Right. Yeah. Because Versa wants them to heal and move on. You know. He feels like holding on to his canvas would not is just not healthy. Let me go back what we said. Yes, it'll be crap at first, but they can't get that pain back by re-entering the canvas. Yeah, and I see your point. I see your point. Mom and Mayel and anyone else who might try to rescue them, even then whomever remains inside the canvas will eventually be used up and die, so the family would have to deal with that person wasting away slowly. That's what he wants, but is it what they want, and will it work? Is his sis happy looking like that and unable to speak? No. Mayel Alicia said so herself. She literally said she is merely existing, right, in the real world. She doesn't feel like she's living. She is merely existing. And for her to feel alive, she wants to stay on the canvas, surrounded by the painted fictional people that she's grown to care for and love as her family too. It's tough, man. It's tough. It's crazy. And it's honestly great storytelling because it sparks this discussion. It sparks these themes, these topics, and like I said, I don't think anybody's wrong. You guys are entitled to feel how you want to feel about this. She's not happy, but she still has her powers, so she can re-enter other canvases to speak. True. But the thing is, Blood, she's attached to that canvas with those characters and people in it. So I'm just going off based on how she's written, how she is written. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to just do another painting or canvas to like enter in where she can talk, because she is already attached to these people within this canvas she loves and cares for. Why would she want to replace them or go to somewhere else new? That's her thought process, right? Which we do the same thing over and over again. Yep, yep, yep. Galaxy. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, yep, yep. So it's wild, man. There's no, man. And I appreciate y'all engaging in this conversation. The canvas is always being repainted. Hold on, let me go back. The canvas is always being repainted, and it can always be painted for a better closure. Question mark. That is a good point. And yeah, who's to say that can't happen, right? Who's to say that maybe the canvas can be repainted with the same characters, things like that? They didn't try to address that. They didn't try to say like, oh, it's okay, Mael or Alicia, let's leave now and let's repaint. But the issue, one of the key issues was it was the last piece of Versal's soul in the canvas. Alicia and her mother could not move on. Their father, Renwar, and I guess Clair too, are able to move on. And they're ready to, and they want, because they know they need to heal, and they know they need to grieve appropriately, and them keeping this canvas going is not healthy. Of course, she feels like that now while in the depths of her grief, fresh from obtaining her memories and her grief over everyone so fresh. If she was allowed to heal from being thrust into everything without a break, she might have made a decision more well thought out. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Big problem here was her mental health prior to entering the canvas in the first place. Oh, I agree. Because once again, that fire happened, lost her brother, that broke the family, right? Her mental health was not good. And when I put this on YouTube, if someone in the comments can put like who started the fire, maybe they talk about it or did reveal at some point, I just overlooked it or forgot, whatever. Please do, because I'm wondering how the freaking fire started in the first place, or why was that even a thing? You know, besides obviously like being a plot device and plot point thing. Because man, and I like that this stuff makes you think. Stories like this are really good in games. I like playing games like this that are like movies that tell a great story, have great characters, great writing. They make you think. They make you question things. You know, spark discussions like this. Because I always find it interesting to have discussions like this over certain topics, because, you know, it's cool to get people's different perspectives, right, and opinions, and just have a good talk about it, you know. Mental problems are not easy to heal, though. Oh, 100%. Because you got, at this point, we live in a world where the majority of people, myself included, deal with depression, anxiety. You got a lot of people that are ADHD. You got a lot of people that have been through a lot of trauma in general, right? And not everybody knows how to cope with that stuff. Not everybody knows how to handle that stuff in a healthy way. That's just reality. Leo was lured into a trap by the riders. Versa rescued her, dying in the fire they set. Okay, thank you. Because I was confused. Yeah, and that's another thing too. Who are these writers within this universe? Like, thank you for reminding me about that, Blood. Like, is it the painters versus... I think that's the war in the real world that's going on. Is the painters versus the writers. That's what you got. You got the painters and the writers going at it for some reason. We still don't know who the heck these writers are, right? So maybe a prequel DLC can answer that, going more into that. That's at least what I'm hoping. Or if we can get a sequel of some kind, then they go more into who are these writers? What's the conflict about? you know, can we still maybe have this turn-based type of combat in the real world as well as within the painted canvas, right? Probably not, because all those well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the extent of the powers are that this family has versus the writers in the real world that they've set up. We don't know. So maybe they can still have that like sort of like crazy fun, you know, turn-based RPG combat, but it'd be different, right? Different powers, different abilities, things like that you can do. That'd be sweet. That'd be sweet. Once again, don't know though. They could do a full game on that. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Will they? I don't know. I don't know. My biggest thing, and I'll go over it again, is like, I just want him to explain stuff better. Yeah, there is a lot to dissect here. That's the thing. Like, they need to expand upon and explain better some of the things. Go more in depth about what the heck is up with the painters and their abilities, the writers and their abilities, this whole conflict war shit, right? Some of the lore within the canvas, whatnot, with the characters. Well, that, I mean, essentially, we got the gist of it, right? That's just this. It's kind of like the Matrix, where it's like you're jacked in to this false world, and you think it's a real world. It's like, oh, put over your eyes, right? So here's my weird input. I don't know if I want a sequel. Sometimes sequels don't always live up to the first game, almost cheapening the experience. I bet everyone here can explain at least one series like that. Well, that's a risk, regardless, that you take with sequels. It's not just video games, it's movies too. There is always a risk and gamble that when you do a sequel to anything, it's definitely not going to be as good as the original. It could make the original less important or cheapen it, like you said, cheapen the experience. There's always that risk. There are some movies and things that don't need sequels. I agree. You're 50-50 on it, yeah. Like I said, I'm cool if they do a prequel DLC, story DLC that better explains who the writers are, who the painters are, and their powers and abilities, and why there's a conflict in the first place. I'm cool with that. If they don't do a DLC story that explains that, then I would like a sequel that explains that better. That's what I want. If they can't do the DLC story prequel stuff to the first game, then maybe do a sequel that explains it better. I don't know. Will we get it? Who knows? This is a very successful game. I'm very happy for Stanford Interactive. This is former Ubisoft devs that took a risk, make their own studio, make a game they wanted to play because they were tired of like some of the same old stuff. And I'm happy for them. This game turned out amazing. I see why this game is getting 10 out of 10s. I see why this game is Game of the Year contender. It's still, I think, to this day, the top rated game on Metacritic. I'll be shocked. Well, I shouldn't say this. I won't be completely shocked, but I don't know. I'll still be a bit surprised if this doesn't not win Game of the Year, where it stands right now. Yes, we have other games that are Game of the Year contender, like we just had Donkey Kong Bonanza come out. That's definitely going to be nominated, I feel like. Death Stranding 2, I feel like it's going to be nominated as well. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is going to be nominated as well, right? All great games. But, objectively speaking, they are not the top rated game of the year still, right? That still is Expedition 33. Just dear God, no Romeo and Juliet. There are enough of those. All right. This has been a good spoiler discussion. I know we didn't touch on every little nook and cranny, but I feel like we touched on a lot of the key points and topics about this game. I look forward to coming back to this game at some point, revisiting it in the future when I've taken a nice break and try to go through it and try to do like an actual lore run where I try to go through all the lore of the game potentially. When I have time, hopefully, we'll see. This has been a lot of fun though. And for those that do watch this on YouTube, please comment below your thoughts. Join the discussion. What do you think? We'd love to hear from you.